previously I talked about finding you a God that takes your breath away. Like if you're going to worship God, if you're going to throw your life into it and you're going to give your all and you're going to live for the service of God and maybe even sacrifice your life for God, then you want that it should not be a God that somebody has pumped up with his imagination and all of that. You want to have a God that is truly great and amazing and wonderful and beyond and all inspiring. Now, I said I was going to talk about some gods that I worship, and now for no reason ever in the world that I can think of that I want to worship that version of God ever again. I'll start with one. And this was where maybe my big balanga, like my big pain with God, one of the biggest source of pain that I had with the version of God that I was introduced to began. Personally, one of the things that I value a lot is consistency, coherence, and reliability. And there was an aspect of God that really made me wonder if he can be relied on, if he can be trusted, and major trust issues from this one particular thing. What exactly is that? So, first, the story begins that God, out of all the people in the world, chose a group of people to call his people. Couldn't find. He gave them laws. He even insists that the laws is truth. He makes covenants with them, and he calls the law truth and says it's going to be eternal. It's going to last forever. Everything is going well so far, good and fine. A few centuries later, we are told, God has moved on. Those people that he said was his people forever, now loyalties have not been aligned. Actually, he wasn't really talking about those people. He's talking about some other people. You know that law he called truth? That too is obsolete. You know that covenant that was going to last forever? No, really, it's not forever. And on all of that. I mean, for a God to play hanky-panky with words like that, to change his loyalties like that, it was super scary for me. I'd seen this before in my life in a way that was so life damaging. And I was like, it was so life damaging at experience. I don't want to get into the story now, but I tell the whole story in gory details, like in extreme vulnerability. I told the whole story in my book, what that experience was. Now, to meet a God that changes his minds like that, plays hanky panky with words like that, was super scary for me. So in defense, we say, no, he hasn't really changed. It's just a dispensation. That was phase one. No, it's not reversal. Nothing has been reversed. It's just that has been fulfilled and done away with. No, it's not abandonment. It's progressive revelation. That revelation was okay for that level. Now we have a higher truth and a higher revelation. There are all those things in defense, but it's just not enough. In my brain, in my psyche, and in my body, I'm like, this God cannot be trusted. This God cannot be trusted. I remember one day I had a very real experience. I was like, what if I go through all the pain of sanctifying myself and dedicating myself to God and doing all and being his person and not giving into my indulgences and living my life the way I feel is pleasing for me. And I live for God and live for his values and all of that. And then at the end of the day, by whim, he decides that I no longer want you. You're going to go to hell anyway. And this was a real experience that I had. He tells me, you're going to go to hell anyway because I've decided so. Super scary because you can reason with him. If he told me yesterday that truth doesn't mean truth, I mean, all that hanky panky, all that business was too complicated for me because if he's saying, I'm going to do this to you, and I know that tomorrow he could always come up with very deep, mysterious ideas of how to circumvent that, it was super scary. So I sat that day. I remember exactly where I was, what I was doing, probably remember exactly what I was wearing when I had that dramatic experience where I felt in my bone that I couldn't trust this God that would change his mind like that. If a human being was to do a thing like that, imagine a marriage. Guy gets married to a woman, make all these vows in public, and then tomorrow he eases and excuses himself out of all those promises and vows and commitments he made, and then tells that, look, I didn't actually break my vow, I fulfilled them. That was phase one. That was progressive. And gives all those excuses. It might sound spiritual. It might sound mysterious. It might even sound deep. But bottom line, at the end of the day, he's just not reliable to do what he says he would do and to keep his word throughout time and all of that. Yes, I know that if you're listening to this and you're a very good student of the scripture, you want to pull me at the corner and explain to me the difference between Old Testament, New Testament, and you want to clarify all my confusion as you would think it is. I know all, if you read my book, yeah, I know all of that. I'm telling you about an experience I had in the past, and I'm telling you that that's not necessarily where I am at the moment, but I'm telling you that that's what happened in the past. I know all the different takes. I know all the gospel of grace, all the different versions of it, to the depth of it. I even preached some of those versions myself at some point in my life. So, yes, I know of that. But my point is that there was a point in my life that the only version of God I had was a God that once had his people and had promised those people loyalty forever and had given a law, and he called that law truth, and he said it would be eternal. But that changed his mind, and the new dispensation came in where all of that was either obsolete, phased out, or fulfilled. And then we have something. Now, forever has to be explained, truth has to be explained. And once all of these words no longer mean something, when God says to me, for that particular God, if he says to me forever, I'll be like forever for real, or forever like the kind of forever that in some few years you will change your mind and say it's fulfilled, it's absolute. So this God necessarily is not cruel, is not evil, but he's just disturbingly flexible. And that, to me, is not a God that takes my breath away. It's not a God that I want to throw my whole life off for and just live for his purpose. I can handle mysteries. I can handle complexity. I can handle deep, complicated ideas. But what I couldn't handle was a God that was his commitments, that did not keep his commitments, that will make commitments and not keep them. This to me was intolerable. I couldn't handle that. And not just that I couldn't handle that, also the inconsistencies that the masters of theological gymnastics try to weave together and defend God and apologize for God. All of that was disturbingly inconsistent for me, for a God, or for something that I would call God. So, number one, for a God that doesn't take my breath away, that nothing in this world today would coerce me enough to worship that particular vision of God, is a God that doesn't keep his commitments, that plays hanky panky with words, that his words can be changed, and, whatever people say he does with his words, you could call it deep, but it's just disturbingly flexible and unreliable. And I think it is unbecoming of something that I want to throw my life to in worship and adoration and praise and awe. Talk that I'm trying to have with you now